I'm John Walther, and I'm very excited to give you the first look at Project NV with this first official devlog for the game. Project NV is a game that I've been developing in my spare time for free. It's an action-adventure game set in an open-world city which is a fantasy reimagination of Venice. Imagine an alternate fantasy world where Venice is the most powerful state on Earth. Our story takes place during the Second Renaissance, a golden age that has lasted centuries. Venice has been rebuilt to its most glorious form imaginable by the world's most renowned architects and artists. Imagine if Michelangelo had unlimited budget to create the most beautiful city. That's the premise for how this city has been designed. This project is something I've wanted to do for years. All the way back in 2022, I was working at Ubisoft and I had the idea to remake Assassin's Creed 2. I left Ubisoft around that time, but the idea stayed with me, and over the years it changed from I want to remake Assassin's Creed 2 into I want to make a fantasy Venice with a banger music soundtrack. So since the beginning, I've always felt like music is at the core of what this project needs to be special. Music was so important to me for this project that I felt like I had to create the music before I could really figure out what the game even was. Luckily, around 6 months ago during the winter holidays, I met Dr. David Luis Ortega. I pitched him my vision for the game, showed him some of the work in progress, and he liked it enough to agree to help me, and so he became the first person I officially onboarded onto this project. Who is Dr. Ortega? I'm glad you asked. He's been doing music for mass media for decades. You can see on his website all the credits he has along with his partner, Xiaoan Li. So that song you're hearing in this video is actually his first official track for the official game soundtrack. I'll upload it as a separate video so you can listen to the song without me talking over it. Now, one of the core pillars for Project NV is we want it to feel nostalgic. I think Venice is a very nostalgic city, even if you haven't been there. It gives you that sense of longing, and we want to complement that with the soundtrack. So the reason we chose drum and bass for this first song is because a lot of retro games from the 90s and early 2000s had this kind of music. And quite frankly, those games were a lot better than the games coming out today. And we want to evoke that same magical feeling you had playing those games when you play Project NV. Some of the big fantasy inspirations for this project are Lord of the Rings and even more so the Final Fantasy games. I'm also taking inspiration from Claire Obscure Expedition 33, the way they made a fantasy world based on France. I want to make a fantasy world based on Venice. But Project NV isn't going to be dark fantasy. It's going to have a more upbeat story. I really want people to enjoy the time they spend in this world. I want this city to feel like a place you can relax in and appreciate. That doesn't mean the story isn't going to have any drama or any sad moments. It will, but they won't dominate the tone of the game. I want something that's fun to play and makes you really appreciate video games as an art form. You know, this whole idea that we can create these incredible fantasy worlds to immerse ourselves in. That's at the core of the experience of what I'm building here. So after I onboarded Dr. Ortega, I kept working on the project for a few months, and things were progressing slowly until finally one day I introduced the project to my friend Sasha. Now Sasha has a master's degree in architecture, and he's done these kind of fantasy architecture designs from his time working at the National Paris Opera, and he's also worked on many big AAA games as he was lead concept artist at BioWare, amongst other roles. And I just want to say I worked with a lot of amazing artists over the course of my career, and Sasha is the best, by far. So Sasha started working on Project NV as art director about 2 months ago, and things have been really progressing since he started helping me out. You can see these buildings he started with, they're incredibly detailed, and it already gives it a kind of fantasy aesthetic. You can see on the bottom floor we have the classic Greco-Roman style. On the middle floor you have this classic Gothic style with curved shapes. And then on the third floor you have this Ionic style, which was typical of Constantinople architecture. And this is emblematic of Venice. If you look at pictures of real Venice, you'll see that there are a lot of different architecture styles, even in the same buildings. That's what gives it this kind of fantasy look. Now everything Sasha made for me is modular and everything fits together perfectly. So once he gave me all these models and once we had the art direction figured out, it took me less than a couple of weeks to do this layout. It was more like 1 week. Now as you can tell, I made the city very dense. I considered every camera angle as much as possible. It's still a block out, so some areas are less developed than others, and we're probably going to end up redoing a lot of this anyway. I have a lot of recordings that I took while I was working on this, so I'm going to post those videos in the coming weeks, so subscribe if you want to see an in-depth look into my process. You'll notice a lot of the buildings don't have detail because it's not the focus of what we're doing right now. We're trying to prototype the game. Eventually all these buildings will be detailed. Once all the buildings have balconies, windows, rooftop gardens, and all the extra details, it's going to look amazing. But for now, you're just going to have to use your imagination. And yes, that is Anna Orlando from Dark Souls in the background. I'm using it as a placeholder for now. I promise I'll replace it with something even cooler soon. So what's next? Before we can start working on the alpha version of the game, we need to know what kind of game we're making. We don't have a gameplay loop yet, but now that I've made the city, I'll be able to prototype different kinds of gameplay inside this environment. That'll come slowly over the next few months. I'm also going to keep posting videos. I have a lot of content that I recorded while I was making this, and I'm going to slowly upload it over the next few months. I'll show my process and elaborate on some of these ideas. We'll continue to improve the environment as well. Sasha has already sent me new modules that I haven't had time to integrate yet. I don't have a lot of time to work on this because I have a full-time job, so I only work on the weekends or when I'm on holidays. So don't expect anything anytime soon. But I'm going to continue to improve the city layout, and eventually we're going to get to prototyping gameplay. And that's where it's going to really get interesting and where the game is going to finally take on a real identity. So this is Project NV. It's a fantasy open world Venice game. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.